As the air turns crisp and the holidays draw near, comfort becomes the best gift of all. Quince delivers layers that last, sweaters, outerwear, and everyday essentials that feel luxurious, look timeless, and make holiday dressing and gifting effortless. Quince seriously has it all. $50 Mongolian cashmere sweaters made for everyday wear, denim that never goes out of style, silk tops and skirts that add polish, and down outerwear built to take on the season. Perfect for gifting or upgrading your own wardrobe. You know what is at the top of my list? Quince's Italian wool coats. And the Mongolian cashmere dress, I pair it with black riding boots. And the holiday gift this season, gold everyday hoops for everybody in your life. By working directly with ethical, top-tier factories, Quince skips the middlemen and offers prices 50% less than similar brands. Step into the holiday season with layers made to feel good, look polished, and last from Quince. Perfect for gifting or keeping for yourself. Go to quince.com/KKC for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/KateCasey to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/KateCasey.
The amazing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey, and welcome back for this part 2 of my interview with Nancy Salzman. You can go back and listen to the first interview in episode 1459. In the first part of my conversation with Nancy, we explored the inner architecture of Nxivm, how an organization that presented itself as an elite path to personal growth slowly morphed into a system of control. And we talked about what it meant for Nancy, the woman known as Prefect, to begin unraveling her own participation in that system. But that's only part of the story, because the collapse of Nxivm didn't end with people walking away. It moved into courtrooms. It moved into years of investigations, indictments, and testimony. And it forced the people involved, leaders, members, and survivors, to confront the truth in ways that were often painful, public, and irreversible. Today, in the second half of our interview, we step into that chapter, the legal case. Nancy pled guilty to racketeering conspiracy and ultimately served 42 months in federal prison. Those are the facts. But behind those facts is a more complex reality, one that began the moment she realized that she was no longer being investigated as a witness or a peripheral actor, but as someone who would have to answer legally for her decisions. In her conversation, Nancy talks about what it was like to sit in court and listen as former members described their experiences. People she thought she had helped, people she had known for years, people whose pain she says she did not fully understand until those moments. She reflects on the shock of hearing the scope of what had happened under Keith Raniere's leadership and the process of separating what she believed at the time from what was actually true. We also talk about accountability, what it meant for her to accept a plea, to face sentencing, and to reckon with the ways her ways harmed others, whether she intended them or not. She describes prison not as an endpoint, but as the beginning of a long and often uncomfortable period of reflection that continues even now. And then there's the question of rebuilding. When someone leaves a high control group, their life is already destabilized. When someone leaves and then goes to prison, the rebuilding is twice as complicated. We discuss how she navigates relationships now, what she's learned about trust, both her own and others, and how she's trying to create a life that isn't defined only by Nxivm or by the worst decisions of her past. These are difficult conversations, and they ask us to hold multiple truths at once. That people can cause harm without fully seeing it, that intent does not erase impact, and that accountability and empathy are not mutually exclusive. They ask us to sit with discomfort because discomfort is often where understanding begins. This is my part 2 of my interview with Nancy Salzman.
I didn't stand up to him about many things because at one point, I remember I think I questioned something that he was doing, and he basically threatened that if I had no right, he would say this, that like I didn't understand how he worked with people, and it was none of my business. And if I ever questioned him about how he worked with people, I would never see him again. And I was like, okay.
Did you ever have moments where you were like, I need to leave and maybe do something out on my own?
In the very beginning, I left a few times. And Kristen Keefe always came and got me and talked me back into working with Keith because he was so wonderful and he was so special. And it was Kristen who kept bringing me back. Kristen, who later kind of headed up the Mark Vicente, Sarah Edmondson rebellion.
Like the defectors, yeah.
Yeah, that's another one who owes me.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to leave and she kept bringing me back.
I think a lot of people were surprised to hear that at some point you had a relationship. Again, another like boundary that you wouldn't think would happen with two people that had a company together.
Well, no, it happened before anything else happened in the very, very beginning. And it was very brief. It was very brief. It was like 1 or 2 times. And then he decided that we were going to be partners and this wasn't appropriate. And then that was the end of that.
So at what point are you at the peak of the company? Like things are going well. And even at the peak of it, the company's success, do you still feel like you don't really have complete ownership of your life?
There was always, in the beginning, he was very kind and very, very nice to me. And I don't want to say he was mean to me, but he felt like he had the right to discipline me when he didn't like something that I did. And one of the things that I somehow got into the habit of doing was he wanted to meet the people. Like I went out and I made a lot of contacts. I brought a lot of people into the company. I taught what we called VIP trainings that were high-level trainings to executives. I taught a training on Richard Branson. I taught 2 trainings on Richard Branson's Island with Richard Branson. Like real, high-level people. I coached very high-level people. If I wasn't coaching my executive staff, I only coached people that were high-level people, important, that like nobody else in the company would be the person that would coach that person. A-level actors and actresses. I dabbled in a little bit of everything. He wanted them all to come back to Albany to meet him. He never was going to travel to meet anybody. He wanted them brought to him. And so there would be meetings in my house and he would be sitting at the table. I would be sitting at the table. They would be sitting at the table. He would talk to them. And I realized at a certain point that I wasn't saying anything. And why I wasn't saying anything was because unless he spoke to me directly or asked me for a response, he didn't want me engaging in these meetings.
It's supposed to be about him.
Yes. And I think in Allison's podcast, she talks about the fact that she would just sit quietly while he was, it was, I don't remember how he got the meetings to be that way. But I remember at a certain point, I realized that was going on. And it was very uncomfortable for me to be at meetings and feel like I couldn't contribute. Because if I said something that he didn't like, he would embarrass me in front of whoever the meeting was. So I just stopped doing it. And in retrospect, it's easy for me to see these things, but when it was happening, I don't think I was as cognizant it was happening. And also, I was very busy and I was trying to run my company.
Now, Lauren and Michelle are working with you at this point. So when we talk about in terms of your company, and then he builds the umbrella company, but they're really working just with you?
Well, Lauren was the top trainer in my company. Lauren is very, very smart. And right after she graduated college, she became like my personal assistant when I was starting the company. So she was with me from the very beginning, and she learned everything that I learned in the very beginning. I taught her everything first. And she became an incredible head trainer. And so she was the top trainer in the company. Nobody could do what Lauren could do. Most people couldn't teach without the modules that were the partner to the notes, but Lauren could, and she was excellent at it. And so she taught all the level twos.
I remember, and part of the thing that she said in Allison's podcast is that she was told that your relationship was parasitic and that you both have to have some autonomy. Were you cognizant of that?
He told me my kids were too dependent on me, that I created dependencies with everybody. And he said to me, you really it's not good for your kids to be so dependent on you.
And he says this to a Jewish mother.
Can you imagine?
No.
And also, when Lauren came home from college, of course, I wanted her to move back in the house with me. Mm-hmm. And she did for a little while. And then he said to me, she shouldn't be living here. She should be living on her own.
But by the way, that's like another way of robbing you of your parts of your life. That's a special time with your child.
Yeah.
And it's not like he's a present father for the 2 children that he had, and he has absolutely no idea what it's like to parent.
Yeah. So that was uncomfortable, but I felt like I was doing something that wasn't good for my kids.
Mm-hmm. You were probably beaten down quite a bit by then.
It was difficult. I kept trying to be, I think when I look back at the company, the one consistent thing that everybody who ended up working their way up my company, I can say about was we all wanted to be better. We all wanted to be good. And I think if we didn't want that, it wouldn't have been as easy for him to do what he did with us, because we were just all trying to aspire to something better. Yeah. For me, I wanted to help people and I wanted to be better at it. And why I stayed, in it was because I really thought we had created an amazing product. I worked for other seminar companies. I knew what was out there. I studied all the human potential stuff in the 80s. And I thought what we had was fabulous. And it was the one thing that Keith is excellent at is he can take very complex information and make it understandable to anyone, who's like 12 years old. Mm-hmm. If you're fully cognitive, you can understand this because it's very simple. So going through our modules, they had very complex basis, but they were very easily understood. Mm. And he taught me how to do that, which I'm very grateful for. I think it made me a better presenter and a better teacher.
But do you feel like in retrospect, when you look at some of the things that he added, we know now that he borrowed from a lot of different other, organizations like Scientology. Were you ever like, this doesn't make sense, or I've heard this before?
Well, I knew what I knew when I got there. Like I knew all the NLP. There was some NLP in it. And a lot of it was just from the field of psychology. He had, I'm looking behind me. I was looking for a book. There's a book called The Psychology of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. All the self-esteem stuff comes from Nathaniel Branden's self-esteem. Almost everything that he taught, when I finally went looking for the source material, I found the source material. It wasn't, And when we went to patent it, he wanted to patent it. I don't know if you know this.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going, to the United States Patent Office and trying to defend our patent. We didn't patent the material. We patented the way we taught the material, which was in an inductive style, not a deductive style. So most of what you learn in school is very deductive. The way that we taught it was inductive. So it's a process of, you go through with each module a type of a process of discovery where you answer a bunch of questions, but you don't see where it's going. And then you get some information and then you answer some more questions, but you don't even see how it fits with the first. And then you get some more information. And then all of a sudden at the very end, it's like somebody, pushes that last domino and it goes like, oh, and you see how it all fits together and you have an integration and it changes the way you look at things once you have that. And I think it's a very effective way to teach. Now, not everything was inductive, but some of the modules were extremely inductive. I used to say, come in, and before we start the module, I want you to fill out this questionnaire. Now, the questionnaire was always the sucker punch because you'd be filling out a series of questions that later you would be so sorry you ever answered. But if we didn't get them before you took the class, you'd never admit them later. So I always called them the sucker punch because later you look, you've learned this whole thing. And now I say, now take out your paper and look at number one. And now you have, and now see how that relates to what we just learned. And then we would have discussions about it. And it was always very valuable because you would realize that the whole way you thought about the thing that you were just learning has changed from the beginning of the module when you filled this out to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Really very cool what we did. So that's what we tried to patent. And it was patent pending for like 20 years. And finally a patent's only good for 20 years. It never was patented per se.
Yeah.
It was just pending patent forever. And we paid enormous patenting fees. That was the other thing that all the money in the company went to, were patenting fees, because he wanted everything patented. He wanted to, have patents.
Do you look back now, and now that you know that he was essentially not really doing much all day, taking naps, having meetings, to going on walks, does it make sense to you, or does it still surprise you that he got away with not really doing much?
Well, there's something that I've come to learn, and that is that people who are really smart can get other people to do things for them pretty easily. Mm-hmm. And usually they don't have to work as hard if they're really smart and they know how to use their intelligence. And that's what I learned from Keith by watching. He was really smart and he knew what he wanted to do. And he found me, and I was the one who was willing to do the work. I did the work because I loved it. Mm-hmm. I didn't complain. And it never occurred to me how much work I was doing. I didn't compare my work to his work. We would have like a 1-hour conversation each day of an intensive, and the intensives would go like from 9 to 9. And I would tape the hour of our discussion. But basically what I would do is I would outline a training. And while people were in the trainings, I was writing the training. And sometimes I would have them do discussions while I was writing the training, the next module. And the facilitators would come in and say, they're all done with their discussions. And I would say, no, they need more time. And they would say, no, Nancy, they don't need more time. And I would say, yes, they do. And I'd be typing away trying to get everything in so I could go, have the discussion about what they just did because I hadn't finished writing it. So I was building it while they were doing it. And I was watching their reaction, and then from the reaction, adding to the notes. And so I learned to do that. And I learned to do it more and more efficiently and effectively so that, and I felt like he pushed me as far as he could push me. Like when we had the corporate retreat, every single day in the retreat, there would be a 2-hour module. He knew what those modules were going to be like, but it was at 2:00 every day. I had to pursue him all morning long to have that discussion to like 5 minutes before 2 to get him to have the conversation with me to go do it. So I would have to be writing the module while I had 400 people sitting there taking it.
Wow.
It was so stressful. V-Week, our corporate retreat, was the most stressful week of my life because every morning I did a question and answer for 2 or 3 hours. And then I would have to write the module. Then I would have to teach the module. And then there would be some nighttime thing. But I never worked as hard as then and during intensives as when they were new. They were really challenging. And I used to feel like he pushed me further and further and further. And at some point, I was trying to figure out if he was pushing me further to help me develop better skill and to build my capacity or to break me. There was a point where I thought, is he trying to break me?
I think a big part of it is he needed to keep you busy so you didn't pay attention to everything else that was going on.
I was always busy. He always had me do something. Whenever I was home, I was doing something.
Mm-hmm. If you're too busy, you're not doing audits. You are not talking with others about what's happening in the secret meetings that he's having. But even like V-Week, like the whole thing's about him. That doesn't enrage you at all? I would enrage me. You're doing all the work, but everyone has to call him Vanguard and sing songs to him. And then they all have to kiss him too. Like, what are you thinking while that's all going on?
Honestly, I don't think I resented him. I do remember that as time went on, I started to feel less and less comfortable around him.
Like you don't feel safe?
I just was on edge whenever I was around him.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was always open to scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
So that part was difficult for me. Because he was always, I could never just feel comfortable being myself. Like he was in my house having breakfast, and I never knew if he was going to do something that was going to really cause me to feel very uncomfortable, like I was failing.
Mm-hmm. By the way, the fact that he comes to your house and you have to make him breakfast and all you want to do is go for a run and have a cup of coffee. He just doesn't respect boundaries. And I know that's like, of course he can't, but like just even in the small things. But what about like, everyone keeps talking about him like he is the smartest man alive. He's telling people he has an IQ of like 260, that he was like a triple major. He had a high GPA. We know now all of those things are totally exaggerated or totally made up. Was there a part of you in the back of your brain going, I mean, you're honestly, met a lot of people. You're not the smartest person alive. Give me a break.
He was very smart about certain things. Like when it came to, the curriculum and looking at people and understanding the human psychodynamic, he really had a handle on that stuff. But he underestimated how people would respond to things. Like he didn't have a good handle on that. Like I would say to him, Keith, I don't think this is a good idea. And he would say to me, you don't know what you're talking about. And I would say, Keith, I don't think this is a good idea. Like I knew how people would react to things. Like when he had some of his ideas that I thought were a little bit too out there, I would say to him, I just don't think people are going to be okay with this. And he would say, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking. And I would I didn't fight him. Lauren fought him. Lauren was much stronger with that than I was. And I was always very impressed with my daughter because she stood up to Keith in ways that I just wouldn't. And in the end, let me just tell you this. In the end, if you say to me, Nancy, your life was a nightmare, your life was a living hell. I mean, I went through 2 years of being in a constant state of panic when all this was happening because I just had no idea what was going on. I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was pretty much being told, well, we don't know what's going to happen, but it'll blow over. But the media was blowing up and all of this stuff was going on. And I kept, people kept saying to me, they don't really have anything on you. They don't really have anything on you, and when I finally decided, and, I was the first one to plead guilty, and I know he was very angry at me because I caved. Well, I caved because I was led to believe that my daughter was going to go to jail because they had stuff on her, and that if we didn't both plead guilty and offer to cooperate, that, she could go to jail for 10 to 15 years. And I would never let that happen. And so I know that he was very angry when I pled guilty. And honestly, I never thought I would go to jail. When I tell you, I never believed I was driving to prison with my daughter to be dropped off, and I thought somebody was going to save me. When I tell you, I was in such denial. And as bad as it was, and as bad as everything was in those years when we didn't know what was happening, and I lost my company, I lost my home, I lost my community, I lost most of the people who I thought were my friends. I lost almost all of my retirement. I lost everything, right? And I still wouldn't undo it. If you said to me, if you didn't go to National Health Outlet that day to meet him, if you could choose to have never done that, would you have never done that? And I would have to say no.
And why is that?
Because first of all, I loved my company. I loved what we were able to do. I loved my work. I loved the people. And I became so much more competent and so much more secure in who I am and what I know to be true. Like now, I would never put up with the stuff I put up with then. I would never do that. But back then, I believed that he knew better than me and that he was smarter than I was, and even if he was, I had better judgment than he did, I think.
I'm also thinking about my own mom is a little bit older than you, but born in a time where women would have just assumed the man should be ahead. Like, yes, women have no business running. Do you think part of that is you're a product of your generation?
You're the second person today who said that to me when I described what it was like for me. And yes, I think I am a product of my generation. And I think in a lot of ways, Keith actually even said to me, a woman can only be as effective as the man who supports her. Like in business, unless you own your own company, you're only as effective as the man who allows you to become that successful, because men run everything. And I think in my representation of how business went, it was men, you're right. And to build I built a big company. I built that company. I went out and I went into places where I didn't know people, and I enrolled people, and I taught people, and I did all of those things. But I always felt like, I had Keith. Keith was my mentor, and he was teaching me. And he taught me a lot of things that were very valuable for me.
But you were more valuable.
Well, I couldn't build a business more than like 4 people before I met Keith. And once I met Keith, we built this very big business.
Do you still live in that belief that without him,
No, I could build a business.
You could have built Human Performance Factor. That could have been your own company and done a fantastic job.
And I still may, because that's a great name.
I know. I thought about that right away. The minute you started talking about it, that should have been the name of the company.
So I want to tell you something. If you ask me what I'm going to do now, I haven't decided what I want to be when I grow up. right now I'm doing coaching, but like I have a bunch of ideas of things I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I like even saying yes to you to do this podcast is me putting myself out there after that nightmare that happened and just wondering how people are going to react to me. You know, it was, and I'll even tell you when Allison Mack said in her podcast, we did this whole thing and even Nancy didn't know about it. Relieved that somebody vindicated me because when I said I didn't know about it, I don't think people believed me. Keith kept us on a need to know basis only. And even though I was his business partner and I was the thing that gave him credibility, when he did that thing, he lied to me about it until the very end. He never prepared me for what could happen. He left the country and didn't explain to me what was going on. And when I was listening, even listening to Allison's podcast this week, he knew that the federal government had a case on him and he didn't warn me. That's horrible.
But even when you guys would ask him questions, his response was, that's none of your business. You don't need to know that. And flip it to, and Allison kind of explains that too about, well, this says more about your need for growth, that you need to know things that are not of your concern.
Yes, he would do things like that. And when he left the country, it was also interesting. Remember I said he used to call me. I used to have to talk to him every day. When I was home, I would see him almost every morning because he would always want me to make him breakfast. That's how he started his day. And so we talked every day. He left the country and I never heard from him again. Never. There was no communication after that. So I went from being the person that he spent time with every day and, whatever, we were business partners, to he left the country, didn't warn me about what was going on, why he was leaving, and never talked to me again. Invited me to come to Mexico once for a meeting. And during that meeting, I said to him, what is going on with this women's organization? And he assured me he had nothing to do with it.
And then you have to find out that your own daughter was part of that group.
I found out when he wanted her to sit up in front of a room full of people. And, when Nippy, Sarah Edmondson's husband, came and started screaming about the branding at one of the coach summits. The executive board met and I was teaching the coach summit. And after 2 days of them not telling me what was going on, I remember saying, I'm not going to teach anymore if you don't tell me what the hell's going on here. And Lauren took me for a walk and she told me she said, Mom, it's not bad. It's a sorority. And don't worry, it's really a good thing. And she described it like something that she did in college, there's nothing bad about it.
But then when you realized they were together, or she believed they were together in this relationship, and that it may, and it may result in having a family, that he basically kept her on a string and essentially was robbed of those years. How did you find that out?
Well, she used to talk to me about it. She was sad.
Yeah.
You'll talk to her about it. She'll tell you all about it. Lauren's very open.
How have you been able to talk through this stuff with? She's not just your child; she was your coworker. And you've been through this incredibly traumatic experience. How do you do that?
During the pretrial, remember I told you it went on for a very, very long time. We spent almost every day together because we were the only people we were allowed to talk to.
Yeah.
So she would come over every single day. I ended up having cancer surgery and a number of different things. And so the girls were helping me. Lauren and I spent almost every day together. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. It was such a difficult time. And then when I got better, I ended up going down to New Jersey and taking care of my folks because I realized that they weren't doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And so pretty much I moved in with them, and then we weren't spending quite as much time together, but we still spent a lot of time together. Because the only place we could go, like when Lauren was on home confinement, like she could come see my parents
Mm-hmm.
or she could come see me, but we couldn't go. We couldn't go very many places. At one point, I realized that Kathy Russell had a curfew, and I said to my lawyers, "Why can't I have a curfew?" And they asked, and I got a curfew, so I was able to leave the house then without asking permission.
It makes me so sad thinking about the others who didn't have a family member that they could, be with.
Everybody that we knew had taken our trainings.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't supposed to talk to anybody.
So you have this
Such a difficult time, and everybody
Yeah.
just left. And then you didn't know why people left. Most people left because they were afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of my friends that I was spending most of my time with just disappeared one day and moved back to where she used to live. She said, "I'm going to go back there for a little while." And she just never came back.
Wow. Did you carry guilt? Because, for the public, they're thinking, well, it's the second in command and that she must have known everything, but you can't really do interviews. You're going through litigation and you can't communicate with the people that you worked with. What's that feeling of like not being able to speak your truth?
Well, at some point, Jahan,
Mm-hmm.
who was the producer of The Vow, or director of The Vow, came and talked to my lawyers and asked if she could talk to me. Now, I knew her because I met her in California. She came to one of my trainings, and she started visiting me, and she filmed me pretty regularly through that time.
Mm-hmm.
She even came to my parents' house and visited me there. And so she was like a godsend to me because she would bring me information. Like I have to watch it again. I only watched it once. It was hard for me to watch, and it was really painful, the whole thing. And but honestly, this is when I tell you this, it's hard to believe. I learned what was going on in my company by watching The Vow and talking to John.
Yeah, because I feel like you were all siloed.
Yeah, we were. And then even watching Allison's thing, I learned about the sorority. I never knew any of those things. And it was very hard to watch, very painful. And I felt very guilty that, it was my company. I was promoting that. I didn't even know what I was promoting. I thought he was a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my lawyers used to say to me, "What are you going to do when you find out the truth about him?" And I remember saying, "Well, it's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. He is a good guy." And they would just nod their heads and then they were preparing me at one point for trial. And during that time, I remember that's when I started thinking, maybe he's not a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because they all could see things that I couldn't see in terms of the discovery. And they all were in agreement that he was not a good guy, that he had done very bad things. And it wasn't until we read the discovery, Lauren and I were allowed to read the discovery, but it took a long time till we were allowed to read it. And she came over to my house and we sat in my house and we were reading it side by side. And I remember I looked up at Lauren and I said, "He did it. He's guilty. He did all the things they're saying." And the other thing that I find so disturbing from Allison's is that Allison and Lauren both asked the lawyers if Keith had just admitted what he did, if we would have had to go through everything we went through, and they all said no. And that was horrifying for me because I had forgotten about that.
Mm-hmm.
That he refused. And there was one point where he tried to get us to offer ourselves up as his collateral. In other words, go to jail so he could be out.
Mm-hmm.
So he was willing to exchange our freedom for his freedom. And at that point, I was kind of like, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. I don't trust him. I trust that he'd run again.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd be in jail.
It seemed like his modus operandi, it was always to have women recruited who came from enormous amounts of money.
Not always, but he always wanted us to get to the most successful people in whatever field. Like if we were recruiting people in education, he wanted you to go to the top of education. If you were recruiting people in business, he wanted the top business people. If you were recruiting people, in Hollywood, we were going to go to the grade A actors and actresses. And he was always looking for the top people because I think he thought it gave him more credibility to be associated with people like that all the time.
It's very L. Ron Hubbard to have that belief system.
And that's what he did. That's what he wanted. That's what he, inspired in us. So he was smart. He knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
He just wasn't, he misgauged people.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a lack of empathy which caused him to misgauge people.
Are you at a point now, though, where you can look back at him in the dumb volleyball outfit and just laugh and make fun of him? Because I hope you are. And if you aren't, I will make fun of him for you. Or the training videos when he was trying to grow out his hair to make himself look younger. I'm like, dude, it's not working.
I think he wanted, the thing that was most important to Keith was that he wanted respect and he wanted tribute, but he demanded it. He didn't inspire it. He demanded it.
Well, did you want to be called prefect, or was that his deal?
I was so uncomfortable when he came up with titles.
What about the Girl Scout sashes? The Girl Scout sashes. Was that his idea?
Of course.
Yeah.
He thought it was a great idea. Well, because he did martial arts as a kid and he thought the whole idea of modeling, your growth after,
Can you imagine him in a jiu-jitsu class? I mean, come on.
I can't imagine it. No.
Are you still untangling things that he said? Like for the outsider, the Guinness Book World of Records, I'm like, okay, yeah, but he submitted. Like all those things, I'm like, this guy, come on. But you guys were all so deep entrenched. Do you still feel like you're still untangling a lot of it?
Yes.
Do you feel like you've been robbed of things? Like one thing I wonder about is you had no opportunity for dating in all those years. Do you miss out on that?
Well, do I miss out on that? I feel like when I was younger, if I ever would have had like a companion, like a man in my life, it probably would have happened when I was younger, not now. And now it's not like I would ever want to be married again, or I would want I'm pretty independent. But I would enjoy having someone to go out to dinner with a couple times a week, or travel. I would like that. And I feel like he took that away.
Mm-hmm.
He made it impossible. He made it a prerequisite that I would not have a romantic relationship at all. And then there was a time when I met someone that I liked very much. And I wanted to relate with him in a more romantic way. And Keith made it impossible for me. And he also said, well, he made it seem like I would always be more evolved than a man that I would be working with. And it would be like taking on a child. He had nothing good to say about me having someone in my life that I might enjoy. He didn't want me even having friends that I did things with, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
when so when he created DOS, I didn't know he created DOS. I just knew that he stopped being so controlling with me.
Oh, so you're probably relieved.
It was relieving because I had a friend in Mexico, a female friend who was married and had kids, and like they sort of adopted me, and they would take me to their place in Acapulco, and they would take me out to dinner, and we would hang out, and I just loved her, and I loved the kids, and she and her husband aren't together anymore. Her husband still reaches out to see how I'm doing, and she does too, and we're still friends. But that friendship at one time, he wouldn't have allowed me to, he wouldn't have been okay about me having, but he got busy and he didn't notice that I was doing friend things.
So a lot of listening to Allison's podcast and hearing everyone's singular story, do you feel like you even knew what was going on with them personally? I mean, you're so deep into work and you have your own family. What has this been like to hear all of their stories?
Well, hearing Allison's story was difficult. Because it was so, I had no idea that he was doing, I knew that the sorority existed, obviously, because after all of this, and Lauren told me some stories, but when I hear exactly what he did, it's kind of horrifying. I mean, Lauren has told me it was terrible, and she's explained certain things to me, but she never got into the detail that Allison gets into in her podcast. And the interesting thing about Allison is that he really took advantage of the fact that Allison really was a spiritual seeker, and he made himself her guru. And so she did all of those things thinking that she was on the path. I remember Lauren said to me during pretrial, Allison really thought she was a seeker, and this whole thing was very spiritual to her. And I was kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. Knowing Allison, she always did yoga, and she always had her practices, but listening to that was deeply disturbing for me.
It's so interesting to hear everybody's different point of view, because you're all so different and you're part of this organization. And the way that he was able to make each person feel like they relied on him for their growth, and only him, like he was really the route.
Well, because he knew better than anybody, right? He was, I think he wanted to pass off at one point that he was like enlightened, In the very beginning, he wanted me to read Siddhartha, and I think he was trying to insinuate to me that he was enlightened, but I didn't buy that. I never thought he was enlightened. When people asked me if I thought he was enlightened, I would say, I don't think so. I think he's he's very, very smart and he's come up with some very good things, and we've learned a lot from him, but I don't
Is there audio of you saying, I'm trying to go back in time. Is there a video of you saying something like he's the smartest man alive? Like, would he make you say that?
He would make me say he has one of the highest IQs ever scored in history.
Oh God. Yeah. This was before Google, where people couldn't really research things either. So you just had to take someone for their word.
Yeah. I don't know if I like Google or I don't like Google, because it's really hard to get rid of all this stuff. And the media was so awful to us. I read things about myself that I couldn't believe that were being said. Although really there wasn't a lot about me, because I wasn't like Allison Mack. I wasn't like a star. I wasn't Keith. I wasn't Claire. I wasn't an heiress. So there wasn't.
Yeah, but people were like, you're the second in command. So that means you knew everything that was going on in your part and you're responsible for it. So that must have been deeply painful.
It was deeply painful. It was deeply painful because I do feel responsible. Especially when I was away, it was like really trying to come to terms with, how did I miss so much? How was I that wrong? I think a lot of the people who still believe Keith is good, can't really, it's really hard to look at. If I was wrong about this, maybe I'm wrong about everything. That's a hard thing to walk around with for, years of like.
Well, also, you devoted all that time and work. That's your life's work.
There's so much work in it. So, on the one hand, I feel very competent to do something else. On the other hand, I'm a little reluctant to go out into the world because I know there'll always be some negative things. And even though I've been fortunate, however Jahan did the vow, I got so many wonderful letters. By the way, if anyone is listening who sent me a letter and I didn't respond to it, thank you. Those letters were like a lifeline to me, and they made me feel, because I was in prison when that went out, and I started getting so much mail. Like I would have, 10 or 12 letters a day.
Oh, wow.
It was so wonderful, and they were so beautiful and kind, and people shared their lives with me and what they thought, and I don't think I got one negative. I got one negative letter from my best friend from high school. Who had spoken to Sarah Edmondson and decided I was a villain, and had called my mother and was just really brutal with me. Never asked me what my story was, never anything, just made a lot of assumptions and was very mean to me. And then wrote me a letter saying, well, maybe you didn't know. It's the most negative letter I got from anybody. Everybody who wrote to me, who bothered to figure out where I was, and I think I must have gotten 300 letters, were so kind and so wonderful. I remember just at night, because we would get mail at 6 or 7 o'clock, and I'd go back, to my bunk, and I would lay down on my bunk with my reading light, and I would just sit and read these letters and cry, because people can be so kind and so good. And I felt like whatever Jahan did, she didn't portray me as a monster. She portrayed, what I felt.
Well, I think as time goes on, people start to see his madness, because he certainly has never apologized for anything. And that there are
responsibility for anything. All of us are taking responsibility for, Allison's taking responsibility. Lauren took responsibility. I feel like I'm taking responsibility. I constantly, try to be better and work through, how did I do that? I think, all of us have been forced to really do a lot of soul searching and look at that. I don't know what it's like to be Keith, but the fact that I never heard from him again is just, it's kind of disturbing, because I feel like I really was just a utility. Like I was a means to an end for him. And that's a hard thing to realize, where you're totally loyal to someone, and then you feel like you were a means to an end, his end. And when you were no longer valuable, you were no longer worth even trying to communicate with.
I can't stop thinking about all of those women that he, this stupid line of energy reading and, the energy levels, and you have to be a certain level around him. He needs good energy, and how he must feel in prison every day. Force field's probably not working out well for him.
Right. He used to talk about the fact that he was feeling weak because there was so much of a drain on him from the system. And when he went to prison, I realized, he didn't get sick. None of those things happened. And I started to question, how did I ever believe that stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of things that he said and did that now when I look back, or, I say to myself, how could you have thought that that was really true. Like, why didn't you question more?
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that I was very respectful of what I saw that he could do. And he also taught me what I'm saying. Like, I'm so much more competent than I was before I met him. And it's because he did teach me many, many important, useful things.
Well, I think the people that I've spoken to in the organization too say that the teachings were very helpful. So you're wrestling with that all the time. And
Yeah.
what are some ways that what are some of the things that you're still untangling? Because it does seem to me that a lot of the women, there's residual pain from body dysmorphia. Like that's going to take a long time to untangle, if ever. Are there things for you that you're still kind of untangling?
I think the thing that's the hardest for me is that I feel anybody who was really hurt, like when I listen to Allison's, tapes, and I mean, there are some people that I don't think really were hurt by him, because unless you came into contact with him,
Mm-hmm.
and you were in his radar, he didn't affect people badly. I mean, and what he was able to give them was very good. I think what we created was very good. What the company did, I think, was very good. And at one point, the judge said there were no charges against the company.
Mm-hmm.
The company was not in the case. My company was not in the case at all. It was him and they called it his inner circle, his group of people that he was affecting, that he sort of, had do things for him. I think that, in the end, people benefited a lot from the company, and that makes me feel good. What I struggle with is that the people who were hurt, that's part of it too. And I feel responsible.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, my being wrong affected a lot of people because people had a lot of trust in me. And I need to have good judgment. And I think I'm too trusting of people in general. I mean, I think that's one of my best and worst traits, that I'm too trusting.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of ways, my being trusting allows me to work with a lot of people and help people that other people might not help. Also, it gets me, into situations like this. So I question myself: am I being too trusting? Is this person, does this person have good intent? Does this person not have good intent? And I tend to project good intent onto everybody, unless I see something very bad. I just assume people are doing the best that they can.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, the best that they can is not that great, but it's still the best that they can, and they're doing the best they can. I believe in my heart that we do the best we can in any given moment. And it doesn't mean it's the best there is, but it's the best we can. We make the best choices we know how to make. That's what I think.
I think for people that are listening to this, they may at first have thought, I can't imagine this improbable situation. However, everyone goes through periods of life, whether it's an illness, the loss of somebody, you get laid off of a job that you care deeply about, parenting struggles, whatever it may be. You get to a point where you're like, I don't know how to walk out of this. I don't know how to put the next foot in front of the other.
In a job, we take a job and we feel like we're being abused. Many people have come to me where they've taken a job. They have a couple of kids in college.
Mm-hmm.
They can't leave the job. They know it's not good for them to stay there. They can't leave because they feel like if they leave, they're going to affect so many people badly, like their kids. And
how do you do it?
How do you do it? We struggle with every decision. It's not like I got to where I got to with Keith on the first day that I met him. It was decision after decision after decision after decision after decision. So when you look at how did you get to where you got to, it wasn't like I made one decision and then I just stayed with that. When somebody says to me, like I've been working for this company for 20 years, I need to make a different decision. Like I made one decision. I say to them, it's not that you made one decision and you stayed in that job for 20 years. You make a decision every morning when you get up to get dressed, to go to work, and to do it again. Like every day we're making that decision. When we're in a marriage, it's not like you're stuck in a marriage and it's just one decision. Every day you're making decisions that bring you into a deeper and deeper relationship, and it gets harder and harder to walk out of it. For me, I had more and more people in my company that were reliant on the company because they gave up their other jobs to come work for me. And if I had blown up the company, I would have blown up everybody's life. It was one thing to blow up my life, but if I'm going to blow up all the people who had faith in me, that's a whole other thing. For me, that was a big thing when I started really questioning Keith. What does it mean? Do I all of a sudden, make a turn and leave I couldn't leave the company. I was the product. I was the president of the company and I was the product. I was in the videos. I couldn't, I was the one person in that company that if I left, the whole thing would have fallen apart. And I felt really responsible to all the people who believed in it and started centers and left their other jobs. And like you look at that and you say, over 20 years, you take on more and more and more and more responsibility for people. And the most important thing to me was the relationships that I developed. And I would never walk out on somebody who bet on me. And that's the same thing in a marriage, and it's the same thing in a job, and it's the same thing with your kids. And we just make decisions in the only way we know how to make decisions until either it gets so bad that we say, okay, no more, and we walk out. But then we go right back to doing it again because we haven't learned how to make different decisions. Maybe we've made a decision to finally get out of that relationship or get out of that job. But I mean, I've been doing behavior change with people for my entire career. To make a change that lasts, that you can make again and again and again and again, that doesn't happen overnight. Even if you think you've had enough, like I said to you, I'm too trusting. I get myself into trouble because I want to believe the best in people. But I'd rather be a person who's too trusting, who believes the best in people and sees the best in people than anything else. The opposite would be not tolerable to me.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like I have a lot to give, but I don't even know how to do that anymore. What to do with that?
Well, the first thing you did was you walked out of prison with your head held high and you said, I will not allow this to be the rest of my story. I think that's a first big step for anyone to make, right?
And the funny part is, yes. And the funny part is, like, I still feel like I have time to make a decision and still do something really valuable. And I really intend to do it as soon as I figure out what it's going to be. And I feel like now I'm more vital than I've ever been. I actually, and I hate to say, I have to say, I think I'm wiser than I once was. I want to believe that about myself. And I want to believe that I wouldn't make that same kind of mistake again. But every day I just do the best I can. And I want to, we all want to be good. I know that everybody doesn't, but I know that I do. And I think that was, in this case, it was our downfall. I remember talking to one of my co-defendants, and she looked at me and she said to me, if we didn't all want to be good, he couldn't have done it.
No, and he also preyed on the vulnerable. So he met you at a point where you were not making the best decisions because you're just trying to figure out your own way. When someone like that sees somebody who's just trying to survive, it's like they pounce.
Yeah. I can't say that that didn't happen. It did happen. I know that I was not at my best when I met him.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was feeling kind of like I didn't know what to do next. So I was prime. I was prime target. I hate to say.
How so now that you've come home, how have you found your power? How have you gained it back in some way?
Well,
Do you feel like you have your power?
I think I do. I think I definitely do. I when I came home, the first thing that I ended up doing was taking care of my mom, because my mom was still, my mother waited for me because my father passed away the week before I was sentenced. And then I had to get my mother in a place where she would be safe. And my kids were, and my cousin Renee were amazing. And they took care of her till I came home. When I came home, she was waiting. And, she didn't have a lot of capability, and she passed away. I was trying to remember what I did last Thanksgiving, because it's almost Thanksgiving. I was driving down to see my mom, and I got a phone call that she wasn't doing well. My mom passed away on Thanksgiving last year.
Oh, wow.
And so then after she passed away, like I had the house to deal with, and so I finished all the business of their life, my mom and my dad, because they both passed away while I was taking care of them. And so the house sold in like 15 days. I had to go through the whole house, go through everything they had, empty everything out, fix up the house, put it on the market and sell it. It was a lot to do that for me. And it was a lot because it was their house, and it's the house I grew up in, funny enough. And it was just really hard, being in it without them. So there was a lot of grieving that I didn't do while I was away because there was just so much going on. So I think I had to deal with a lot about, losing my folks and losing my business and losing my community and losing all of those things. So I think I've been kind of grieving, like, quietly and coming back little by little by little by little. And I feel like I'm very fortunate that Michelle had a little boy.
Yeah.
And I have a grandson, and I get to spend time with him every week. And that's probably like one of the greatest joys you can ever have when you're like, it's great to have kids, but grandchildren, oh my God, amazing. So yeah, it's been really good for me to have him. And my kids are wonderful, and I spend a lot of time with them. And I would like to be busier in my coaching, but I'm not quite sure how to make that happen. So I haven't done that until I decide what I'm going to do next. I would, I liked teaching. I miss it a lot. And my friend David, who's my best friend, keeps saying to me, "You should be a speaker. You should be a speaker." And I keep saying, "Who's going to hire me to speak? What do they want to hear about?" And he's like,
"No,
"You have
they
so
will."
much to say.
You've said that before. I don't know why I don't like it that you say that.
I would love to be a presenter. I really do love. I have to tell you, I became a ham through all of that, and I love teaching, and I love. And yesterday I said to Lauren, I think I'd love to be a speaker. And she said to me, "Ma, you're really good at presentation." And it made me feel so good that she said that.
Look at someone like Monica Lewinsky, who was an international figure, and she did a TED Talk about cyber abuse. And look what she has done. She went to the London School of Economics. She has a podcast series now. She's like a respected expert in that field. And it all was built out of a TED Talk that she did. And maybe that's where you start.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love to do that.
I think you need to make the company Human Performance Factor.
Human Performance Factor. I have to write that down so I remember. It's a great name. You don't think does it sound too ESP? No, but human performance factor is nice. I like that.
Well, because I think back to that old guy talking to you, and he was like, that's what you are good at. That's you.
He was so great. That's you, right? You're the human performance person.
That's it. That's like a little angel. That's like a God moment where you're like, they see me deep into my soul and who I am and what I'm good at.
You make it feel like, we're old friends just having a chat.
Well, another thing I was going to say is like, you have had all this loss, but you have to think about the things that you gain. Like, you and I met because you sent me an email after I requested an interview, and now we're friends, and I'm going to take you out for a margarita since you were on that damn vegan, non-alcohol diet for 20 years.
I'm flying, to California next week.
And we're going out. But I think you have to look at all the gains that you get. Even those letters that you got in jail, that's a blessing.
I found them. I saved them and brought them home with me. They're in a big box.
What if you did a podcast where you reached out to each person who wrote that letter and you check in and see and ask them about their life?
Oh, that's such a good idea.
Because some of them have written you and they said they have there's some sort of connection that they felt watching. What if you go back, you interview them?
I've watched a lot of things and it never occurred to me to write the personal letter. But now I think about it all the time because it made me feel so good to get them.
Mm-hmm.
It was really it was a godsend, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It got me through some really rough times.
Well, here we are. Now I've asked you 70,000 questions, and the good people should know that we met only about, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, we just met because I said no, and my friend said, you can't say no to Kate Casey. And so I had to write you a letter and apologize for saying no, and then say, can we have a conversation?
Yeah.
So that I could feel comfortable and I could decide. And you were great on the phone, so I said yes. And now I feel like I have a new friend. And you
have a new friend, yes. And I'm so grateful for your time. And I really feel like people are going to be so happy that they feel like they know you and that you took control of your story and told it. And it wasn't about Keith anymore. And I think it really puts into perspective just how someone like him can take advantage of somebody at their most vulnerable moment. Also, I think it's a great learning lesson for women about ensuring that you maintain your power in business and protect yourself.
You can maintain your power anywhere if you choose to. But if you want to, even when I was away, I decided I wasn't going to be a victim. And I decided I was going to get through it and I was going to go on and I was going to have a life after this. And that was what drove me. And if in that circumstance, you can feel like you're in control of your emotional responses and you're in your power, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah. Well, what if people want to write you a letter or contact you?
You can contact me on Facebook, on Instagram. I don't really post very much, but my stuff is all there, or LinkedIn. Any of those places you can find me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
It was a joy. I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The amazing Kate Casey.
I'm going to thank my wonderful guest, Nancy, and remind you to make sure that you click subscribe. Please leave a 5-star review and join the Facebook group Reality Life with Kate Casey. I would love to hear a discussion about what you made of this story and of these interviews. Also, make sure that you check out my bonus podcast on Apple Podcast and on Patreon at patreon.com/Kate Casey. I will talk more about these interviews. And also make sure that you get my What to Watch list at katecasey.substack.com. There, I will tell you what to watch each week in unscripted TV. And lastly, please follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at @KatecaseyCA, TikTok, it's Kate Casey, and Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at @KateCasey. Check back tomorrow for an all-new episode.